Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever felt like you were trapped in a conversation, defending who you are, justifying your every move, or explaining your intentions over and over again, only to be met with criticism, ridicule, or indifference? I want to share a story with you that many of us can relate to. There was a woman, a close friend, who worked tirelessly to make her dreams a reality. Every step she took was met with skepticism from those around her. Her own family, her friends, people she trusted, constantly questioned her choices, dissected her decisions, and tried to impose their own limited views on her. For years, she kept trying to explain herself, justify every action, believing that once they understood, they would support her, but no matter how hard she tried, it never worked. The more she explained, the more they pushed back. It took her a long time to realize she wasn't dealing with people who wanted to understand. She was explaining herself to demons and people who thrived on criticism, negativity, and control. The truth is, we all have faced, or will face, moments where we feel the need to justify ourselves to those who will never understand. We live in a world where validation is often mistaken for love, and we seek approval from people who will never give it to us. The painful reality is, no matter how much we explain, no matter how many ways we show them our truth, some people will never be able to see it. Why? Because their demons blind them to your light. Let's talk about those demons for a moment. I'm not talking about the supernatural forces that haunt your dreams or the shadows you fear in the dark. These demons manifest as toxic traits in people: judgment, envy, criticism, pride. The people who are so consumed by their own insecurities that they project their fear and hate onto you. And yet, we keep explaining ourselves to them. Why do we do this? Because we are conditioned to believe that if we just try hard enough, if we explain our hearts clearly enough, the world will understand us. We are told that our worth depends on how much others accept us. But what if I told you that explaining yourself to these demons is not only futile, it's harmful to your very soul? Each time we feel the need to defend our choices, our beliefs, our very existence, we give away our power. We waste our energy trying to earn approval from people who are not capable of offering it. And in doing so, we lose sight of our own worth. The truth is, some people will never understand your journey. They will never grasp the significance of your decisions, the weight of your struggles, or the beauty of your dreams. Stop explaining yourself to demons and people. Stop shrinking your voice, hiding your light, or sacrificing your peace to make room for their negativity. You are not here to be a puppet to anyone's insecurities. You are here to walk in your truth, to live your life unapologetically. The sooner you realize that the need to explain yourself is born from fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood, fear of not being enough, the sooner you can free yourself from that prison. When you stop explaining yourself, you reclaim your power. You no longer seek approval from those who are incapable of seeing your worth. Instead, you set healthy boundaries that protect your energy and your peace. You trust in the fact that those who are meant for you will never need an explanation. They will understand you not because you explain yourself, but because they are aligned with your truth. You must remember that true freedom is not about being liked by everyone or constantly defending your choices. True freedom comes from the ability to live your life without seeking permission from others. True freedom is knowing that your worth is not dependent on anyone else's opinion. So, next time you find yourself explaining yourself to someone who refuses to see you, stop. Look at the situation with clear eyes. Ask yourself, is this person truly invested in understanding me, or are they simply trying to impose their own narrative on my life? And then, walk away with your head held high, let go of the need for validation, and trust in your own power. Stop explaining yourself to demons and people. You are enough just as you are. Explaining yourself to demons and people is a concept that goes beyond just defending your actions or intentions. It's about recognizing when certain individuals are not capable of truly understanding your choices, your values, or your journey. These demons, as I refer to them, are not literal supernatural forces, but rather the toxic behaviors and attitudes that some people carry with them, often unconsciously. These can manifest as judgment, bitterness, skepticism, or a need for control over others. These behaviors are rooted in insecurity and often arise from their own unresolved fears or past experiences. They do not seek understanding, they seek to tear down, to criticize, or to manipulate, and no amount of explaining will ever change that. In these situations, when we attempt to explain ourselves, we are essentially hoping that by articulating our truth clearly enough, the other person will come to understand us. We believe that if we just break down our intentions or reasoning in enough detail, the person will finally get it. And that understanding will lead to acceptance, respect, or at the very least, empathy. But often, this is not the case. Instead, it leads to a cycle of frustration, exhaustion, and emotional depletion. At the heart of the issue is the idea that we are explaining ourselves to people who aren't truly interested in understanding us. They may pretend to listen, but their mind is already made up about who you are or what your motives are. They may be projecting their own insecurities onto you, using your choices as a mirror to reflect their own fears or shortcomings. Their criticism isn't about you, it's about their own struggles with self-worth, fear of failure, or a deep-rooted need to control the world around them. Their demons, those unresolved issues within them, cause them to view everything you do through a lens of judgment or superiority, and no amount of explaining will alter their perception. It's important to understand that explaining yourself to these individuals is futile, because it's not a conversation rooted in mutual respect or genuine curiosity. When someone is driven by their own demons, their views are clouded, and they are often incapable of seeing the world from any perspective other than their own. They may react defensively or dismissively to your words, making it feel as though you're banging your head against a wall. The more you explain, the more they push back, reinforcing the idea that no explanation will ever be enough for them. Another key point here is the emotional toll that this kind of dynamic can take on you. Constantly justifying yourself, trying to make others understand, can leave you feeling drained and emotionally worn out. It's exhausting to continually explain, to revisit your decisions, to break down your actions in hopes of convincing someone who is fundamentally unwilling to listen or consider your viewpoint. This can erode your sense of self-worth, making you question whether your choices are valid, whether you're truly on the right path. You may start to doubt your own instincts, second-guessing yourself because you're so focused on earning someone else's approval, even though that approval will never come. The truth is, we don't owe anyone an explanation for the choices we make, especially when those choices are about our growth, our values, or our happiness. Each person has their own journey, and what works for one individual may not work for another. We have the right to choose our own path without needing to validate it to anyone who isn't genuinely invested in supporting us or growing alongside us. Explaining yourself to demons in people also diminishes your power. When you engage in this kind of exhausting dialogue, you give away your energy and your peace to someone who doesn't deserve it. You allow their negativity to take up space in your mind, and in doing so, you forfeit your own ability to think clearly, to move forward with confidence. It's as though you're allowing their demons to take control of your emotional and mental state, letting their judgment cloud your clarity and self-assurance. In essence, this is a form of emotional manipulation. The more you explain yourself, the more you allow someone else to dictate the narrative of your life. You're asking for permission to be yourself, to live according to your own principles. This is not how healthy relationships should function. A healthy relationship, whether with family, friends, or colleagues, should be based on mutual respect, trust, and a willingness to understand and accept differences. But with those who are controlled by their demons, this dynamic is never present. Instead of seeking understanding, they are looking for ways to assert control, to prove their own superiority, or to tear you down to make themselves feel better. So, the solution is simple but difficult. Stop explaining yourself. It's not about being rude or closing yourself off to feedback, but about recognizing when you're in a situation where your explanation will never change the outcome. Recognize when you are simply speaking into a void, and use that energy instead to nurture yourself, to trust your own decisions, and to surround yourself with those who support and uplift you. Your time and energy are precious, and they should not be wasted on people who are not willing to see you for who you truly are. Let go of the need for validation from those who are not capable of understanding or supporting you. Instead, embrace the freedom that comes from knowing your worth and trusting your own judgment, because at the end of the day, the only person you need to explain yourself to is yourself. The need to seek validation from others is a deeply ingrained part of human nature, driven by an internal desire to be accepted, appreciated, and loved. It is in many ways a survival mechanism rooted in our evolutionary need to belong to a group. In a tribal context, acceptance by the group meant safety, resources, and protection. Over time, this need for validation became psychological, shaping the way we interact with the world around us. We find ourselves seeking approval, wanting others to see us as worthy or capable, and this urge can become so powerful that we begin to sacrifice our own authenticity, peace, and sense of self in order to gain it. When we constantly explain ourselves to others, particularly those who are not truly interested in understanding or supporting us, it often stems from a need to gain validation. We convince ourselves that if we just articulate our reasoning or explain the thought process behind our actions, others will appreciate us or at least stop criticizing us. At its core, the act of explaining ourselves in these situations is not about defending our choices or beliefs, but about seeking reassurance from those who we feel have the power to either confirm or reject our worth. We hope that by justifying our actions, we will earn the approval or acceptance that we crave. This desire for validation, however, can be toxic. It feeds into the belief that our worth is dependent on the opinions of others, and it fosters a sense of insecurity that makes us continuously seek outside approval. The more we seek validation from others, the less we rely on our own internal compass. We begin to doubt our own decisions, our self-worth, and our identity because we are constantly measuring ourselves against the standards and judgments of those around us. We may even find ourselves altering our actions, beliefs, or values to fit the expectations of others, losing touch with who we truly are in the process. The need for validation can be particularly dangerous when we're dealing with individuals who are driven by their own demons, those toxic, judgmental, or manipulative people who are incapable of seeing beyond their own insecurities. We may try to explain ourselves to them, believing that once they understand, they will accept us. But this is often a fruitless effort, as these people's demons prevent them from seeing the truth or appreciating our individuality. Their own fears, jealousy, or need for control cloud their judgment, and no matter how much we explain, they will never fully understand or validate our experiences. In these situations, the more we explain ourselves, the more we reinforce the idea that our worth is dependent on their approval. We become trapped in an endless cycle of seeking validation from people who are incapable of giving it. The more we explain, the more they criticize or dismiss us, and the more we feel the need to justify ourselves. This cycle not only depletes our energy, but also undermines our sense of self. We begin to believe that their opinions hold more weight than our own, and this can lead to a loss of confidence and clarity. Seeking validation from others, especially from toxic individuals, also weakens our boundaries. When we're constantly trying to justify our actions or decisions, we are putting ourselves in a position where we allow others to dictate our emotional state. We allow their judgments, whether positive or negative, to control how we feel about ourselves. If they criticize us, we internalize that criticism and let it define us. If they offer approval, we latch onto it as a source of self-worth, constantly needing more to feel validated. In both cases, we are giving away our emotional power, depending on external sources to determine our value. Over time, this pattern of seeking validation erodes our personal growth and our ability to trust ourselves. We become more concerned with how others perceive us than with our own inner truth. We start making decisions based on what will get us the most approval rather than what aligns with our values or desires. We compromise our authenticity to fit into someone else's idea of what we should be, which ultimately leaves us feeling disconnected from our true self. We become so focused on meeting the expectations of others that we forget to honor our own needs, dreams, and aspirations. This cycle can be particularly harmful when we're trying to explain ourselves to people who are not invested in our well-being. In these situations, the need for validation becomes even more dangerous because it's directed toward individuals who are either uninterested in understanding us or actively trying to diminish our sense of self. They may criticize us for who we are, belittle our choices, or manipulate us into believing we need to explain ourselves more clearly. Each time we give in to this dynamic, we are reinforcing the idea that we need their validation to feel worthy. And the more we give in, the more powerless we become. To break free from this cycle, it's essential to recognize that our worth does not depend on the approval or understanding of others. True self-worth comes from within, and it is rooted in our ability to accept ourselves as we are, without the need for external validation. When we stop seeking approval from those who are not invested in our growth, we begin to reclaim our power. We no longer allow others to dictate our sense of self, and we start making decisions based on our own truth rather than the expectations of others. In this process, it's important to learn to trust ourselves and our instincts. We need to remember that our choices are valid, even if others don't understand them. We need to honor our own path, knowing that not everyone will see it or support it. By letting go of the need for validation, we open ourselves up to a more authentic way of living, one where we no longer seek to explain ourselves to those who will never understand. Instead, we find peace in knowing that we are enough just as we are. The need to seek validation from others is often intertwined with a deep-seated fear of rejection or feeling inadequate. This fear is not just about wanting approval, but about the belief that our worth is somehow dependent on how others perceive us. When we are constantly seeking validation, we are essentially asking others to confirm our value, to reassure us that we are worthy of love, respect, or success. This can create a sense of emotional instability because we are relying on external sources, whether it's a person, a group, or society at large, to define our sense of self. When we don't receive that validation, we may feel lost, unworthy, or even invisible. It's as though our existence and our choices only hold weight if they are recognized and accepted by others. The root of this lies in the insecurity that feeds the need for external approval. In many ways, seeking validation is a defense mechanism. It shields us from the harsh reality of feeling rejected or isolated. When we explain ourselves or try to justify our actions, we are attempting to protect ourselves from the discomfort of being misunderstood, judged, or criticized. We want others to see us in a favorable light, to acknowledge our efforts, our struggles, and our successes. This drive for validation becomes more intense when we lack a strong sense of self, when we are unsure of our own worth and purpose. Instead of validating ourselves from within, we rely on others to affirm our existence. In this state, we give away our emotional power, allowing others to dictate our sense of self-worth, rather than looking inward for that assurance. This need for validation is particularly strong when we face criticism or judgment from people who may not have our best interests at heart. It becomes a form of emotional dependency, where our sense of security is tethered to the opinions of others. We find ourselves explaining our actions, our decisions, and even our feelings, all in the hopes of receiving validation from someone who is not open to understanding us. In these situations, our desire for approval overshadows our own voice, and we begin to feel the pressure to conform, to prove ourselves worthy of acceptance, and to seek approval from those who may never understand or appreciate our choices. The danger of seeking validation from toxic or unsupportive individuals lies in the fact that no matter how much we explain ourselves they are unlikely to offer the validation we crave. These individuals may be driven by their own insecurities, and instead of offering understanding, they criticize or dismiss us. They may not acknowledge our worth or the validity of our decisions, leaving us feeling even more inadequate. Yet, we continue to seek their approval, hoping that they will come around, that one day they will see us for who we truly are. This is where the cycle becomes harmful, because the more we try to explain, the more we feed into the notion that our worth depends on their recognition. We become trapped in a loop of self-doubt, constantly questioning ourselves, trying to fit into someone else's narrow expectations. The deeper issue is that by seeking validation from others, we place ourselves in a position where our emotional and mental well-being is dependent on something external, something we cannot control. We may look to our family, friends, or colleagues for approval, but no matter how much we explain ourselves or justify our actions, we cannot guarantee that we will get the validation we need. And even when we do receive validation, it is often fleeting, leaving us hungry for more, never fully satisfied. It's as though we are constantly chasing something outside of ourselves, something that cannot truly fulfill us because it is not rooted in self-acceptance. In a sense, seeking validation from others is an endless cycle of externalizing our self-worth. We look to others to tell us we are enough, but that reassurance is never permanent. The validation we receive from others may be temporary, fleeting, or conditional, which means that our self-worth becomes dependent on factors we can't control. This creates emotional instability because we are constantly shifting our behavior to meet the expectations of others, hoping for approval that may never come or may come in forms that don't truly nourish us. The key to breaking free from this pattern lies in shifting our focus inward. When we stop seeking validation from others, we begin to realize that our worth is not defined by anyone else's opinion. True self-validation comes from within. It is about knowing that we are enough, regardless of whether others see us the way we see ourselves. It means trusting our own judgments, our own decisions, and our own values. Instead of seeking approval from others, we can begin to affirm our own worth by recognizing our achievements, our strengths, and our capacity to grow. When we stop seeking external validation, we free ourselves from the need to explain ourselves to people who are not invested in our well-being or growth. We stop depending on others to affirm our worth and instead cultivate a sense of self-respect and self-love. This shift allows us to make decisions that align with our values rather than based on the fear of judgment or rejection. It also allows us to build healthier relationships where we are not seeking approval but instead fostering mutual understanding and respect. In the end, the need for validation is a product of insecurity, a fear that we are not enough as we are. But when we learn to validate ourselves, to trust in our own abilities and worth, we find freedom. We no longer need to explain ourselves to others in hopes of receiving their approval. We become our own source of validation, and that's where true peace and confidence lie. We stop depending on the acceptance of others and start embracing the power of accepting ourselves, flaws and all. In conclusion, we must remember that we are not here to justify our existence to those who will never understand, nor are we here to seek approval from those who are incapable of offering it. The constant need to explain ourselves to others, especially to those who are consumed by their own demons, only drains us of our energy, self-worth, and peace. True strength lies in the ability to walk in our truth, to trust in our choices, and to value ourselves without depending on external validation. Our worth is not determined by the opinions of others, but by the deep understanding that we are enough just as we are. So, the next time you feel the urge to explain yourself to someone who isn't willing to see you, remember that you owe no one an explanation for being true to yourself. Protect your peace, trust your journey, and let go of the need for approval from those who are not invested in your growth. By doing so, you will free yourself from the cycle of doubt and frustration, allowing you to live a life filled with confidence, authenticity, and inner peace. Thank you all for your time and attention today. I wish you the best of luck on your journey of self-empowerment.